The throne room of the Valerian palace felt too large for Hannah. She stood before the Galactic Council representatives, her blue skin pale under the harsh lights, her ceremonial robes heavy on her shoulders. 3 months had passed since her father's death, 3 months since the assassin's blade had ended his reign, and, still nobody had answers. "Princess Hannah, we understand your frustration," Ambassador Vorin said, his multiple eyes blinking in sequence. "But, we must accept that some mysteries remain unsolved. Your father had many enemies." Hannah's hands clenched at her sides. She was 23 years old, barely trained for ruling an empire, and these ancient politicians treated her like a child. "My father was murdered in his own palace. Someone bypassed every security system we have. That doesn't just happen." The council members exchanged glances. Hannah recognized that look. They were hiding something. They had been hiding something since the moment she demanded a real investigation. Her father had taught her to read people, to see the truth beneath polite words. These representatives were afraid. "We will continue our inquiries," Vorin assured her, but his tone said the conversation was over. "In the meantime, you should focus on your coronation duties." After they left, Hannah remained in the empty throne room. Miho, her head of security and childhood friend, approached quietly. He had been there the night her father died, had held her while she cried, had promised to help her find the truth. "They know something," she whispered. "Yes," Miho agreed. His jaw was tight with anger. "But, we can't prove it." That night, everything changed. A systems malfunction triggered the palace's ancient defense protocols, something that hadn't activated in decades. Emergency lockdown procedures engaged throughout the entire complex. Hannah rushed to the security center with Miho, where Jaiwan, their head intelligence officer, was already working frantically at the main console. "What happened?" Hannah demanded. Jaiwan's fingers flew across the holographic interface. "Someone tried to access the classified archives. The old AI defense system woke up and locked everything down. But, look at this." She pulled up streams of data that Hannah didn't understand at first. Files marked with her father's personal seal, hidden behind encryption layers that should have been impossible to break. The AI had opened them during its defensive scan. "What are these?" Hannah asked, leaning closer. "Records your father kept secret. Very secret." Jaiwan's voice was shaking slightly. "They're about your childhood guardian. The one called Kale." Hannah's breath caught. She remembered Kale clearly, even though she had been only 7 when he disappeared. He had been her constant companion from her earliest memories until that terrible day when her father told her Kale had been reassigned. She had cried for weeks. "What about him?" she asked quietly. Jaiwan opened a file, and genetic data flooded the screens. Complex molecular structures, cellular analysis, DNA markers that Hannah recognized from her basic biology education. But, something was wrong with the patterns. They didn't match any known species in the galactic database. "This is Kale's biological scan," Jaiwan explained. "Your father had it done secretly. Hannah, your guardian wasn't Valerian. He wasn't any species currently in the Galactic Council." "That's impossible," Miho said. "Everyone in the palace is screened. We would have known." "Unless he was using sophisticated genetic masking," Jaiwan countered. "And, according to these files, he was." "Princess, your guardian was human." The word hung in the air like a bomb. Human. Everyone knew that word, the species that had supposedly died out 2 centuries ago when their sun went supernova and destroyed their home system. The primitive species that never made it past their own planet before disaster struck. The galaxy had mourned them briefly, then moved on. "Humans are extinct," Hannah said, but her voice lacked certainty. "That's what we're told." Jaiwan pulled up more files. "But, your father didn't believe that. Look at these notes." He was in contact with a group called the Terran Accord. He hired Kale specifically because he was human. Why? Miho asked the question Hannah was thinking. Why hire an extinct species to guard the princess? Jaiwan opened a video file, and Hannah's breath stopped completely. The footage was corrupted, glitching every few seconds, but she could see Kale clearly. He was younger, his dark hair not yet touched with gray. He stood in what looked like a training room, facing 6 armed Valerian guards. It wasn't a training exercise. Hannah could see the killing intent in the guards' movements. This was real combat. And Kale had nothing but a metal pole. What happened next seemed impossible. Kale moved with a speed and precision that didn't match his gentle demeanor from Hannah's memories. He disarmed the first guard in seconds, used the momentum to strike the second, rolled under the third's blade, and systematically dismantled all 6 opponents without receiving a single hit. His movements were efficient, practical, and absolutely deadly. When the last guard fell, Kale stood breathing hard, the pole still in his hands. He looked directly at the camera, and Hannah saw something in those brown eyes she had never noticed as a child. A deep, ancient tiredness. The look of someone who had survived things they wished they hadn't. Your father's notes say he hired Kale because humans have a unique trait, Jaiwan continued, her voice soft. They form powerful protective bonds, especially with children. Their evolution made them natural guardians. They can endure hardships that break other species, and their tactical thinking in combat is unmatched. Your father wanted the best protector possible for you. Then, why did he leave? Hannah's voice cracked. Why did Kale disappear? Jaiwan pulled up one final document. It was a contract, signed by both her father and Kale. The terms were simple and devastating. Kale would leave the palace, fake his death if necessary, and never contact Hannah again. In return, her father would pay him enough wealth to sustain a small colony for decades. But there was a note at the bottom in her father's handwriting: the council has discovered K's true nature. Kill order imminent. This is the only way to protect both him and Hannah. May she forgive me someday. Hannah felt tears on her cheeks. Her father had sent Kale away to save him. To save her. But, from what? What was the council so afraid of? There's more, Jaiwan said quietly. I found references to something called the Terran Accord in the deepest archives. It's mentioned in connection with your father's investigation into council corruption. I think he was working with humans, Hannah. I think that's why he was killed. Miho put a hand on Hannah's shoulder. What do you want to do? Hannah wiped her tears and straightened her spine. She was her father's daughter. She was a princess of the Valerian Empire. And she had just discovered that the galaxy's most powerful organization had been lying to everyone for 2 centuries. We find Kale, she said, her voice steady and cold. We find the truth about humans. And we discover who killed my father and why they're so desperate to keep this secret. She looked at the frozen image of Kale on the screen, his kind eyes watching her across 16 years and countless lies. I'm coming to find you, she whispered. And, this time, I won't let anyone take you away. The investigation had truly begun, the search had to be secret. Hannah understood that if the council learned what she was investigating, she would end up like her father. So she played her role perfectly, attending diplomatic functions and signing trade agreements while Jaiwan quietly pulled apart the galaxy's information networks looking for traces of one human man. The first Real lead came 3 weeks into the search. A merchant on a frontier mining station reported being saved from raiders by a mysterious figure who refused payment. The description was vague, but one detail caught Jaiwan's attention. The stranger had hummed a song in a language nobody recognized while treating the merchant's wounds. Jaiwan matched the melody to an old Earth recording in the archives. A lullaby. Hannah remembered that lullaby. Kale had sung it to her when she couldn't sleep after her mother's death. "He's alive," she whispered, staring at the report. "He's out there, and he's still helping people." Miho coordinated their movements carefully. He couldn't leave the palace without raising suspicion, so he sent trusted guards to investigate each lead while Jaiwan tracked data and Hannah maintained her public duties. But the reports that came back painted a picture that both amazed and frustrated them. Kale was everywhere and nowhere. On a colony world, a man matching his description had organized refugees to defend themselves against slavers. On a space station, someone with his combat style had trained dock workers to spot traffickers. In a hospital ship, a mysterious donor had funded an entire wing for children with untreatable diseases. Always helping. Never staying. Never leaving a trace that could be followed. The locals had names for him. The Ghost. The Wanderer. The Silent Guardian. Some thought he was a myth, a story people told themselves about justice in a cruel galaxy. But Hannah knew better. That was exactly how Kale had been with her, appearing when needed, protecting without seeking credit or reward. 2 months into the search, Jaiwan discovered something that changed everything. Buried in ancient council records, hidden behind security protocols that should have been impossible to break, was a document called the Terran Contingency Plan. It was 200 years old, written shortly after Earth's sun supposedly went supernova. "Hannah, you need to see this," Jaiwan said, her face pale on the video call. Hannah locked her office door and pulled up the document. As she read, her blood went cold. The Terran Contingency Plan was not a disaster relief effort. It was a suppression protocol. According to the document, Earth's sun had never gone supernova. Instead, the Council had detected signs that humans were developing faster-than-light technology decades ahead of projections. Analysis suggested that within a century, humans would surpass most Council species in technological advancement. The Council's solution was simple and brutal. They fabricated the supernova story, imposed a quarantine around the Sol system, and began a systematic effort to prevent humans from joining the galactic community. Any human found off-world was to be quietly eliminated or isolated. The goal was not genocide but containment, keeping humanity confined to their damaged system where they could never pose a threat to the established order. But the plan had failed. Humans, with their stubborn refusal to accept fate, had escaped. They had built ships from wreckage, learned to hide among other species, and scattered across the galaxy. For 2 centuries, they had survived in the shadows while the Council told everyone they were extinct. "They're afraid of us," Hannah realized. "The Council is afraid of what humans might become." "Not just afraid," Jaiwan corrected. The document talks about human adaptability as an existential threat. It says humans form alliances easily, that other species trust them instinctively, that their tactical thinking and emotional intelligence make them natural leaders. The Council was terrified that humans would upset the power balance. Miho's voice came through the comm, urgent. "Hannah, we have a problem. 3 of the guards I sent to investigate leads haven't reported back. And I just got word that Council intelligence officers are asking questions about your recent activities." Hannah's stomach dropped. "They know we're searching. We need to stop," Miho insisted. "If they're willing to kill your father, they won't hesitate with you." But Hannah couldn't stop. Every new piece of information made her more determined. Her father had been working with humans, had trusted them enough to hire one as her guardian. He had been killed for that trust. If she backed down now, his death meant nothing. "Find me one solid location," she told Jaiwan. "One place where Kale actually is, not where he's been. We end this investigation face to face." Jaiwan worked for 3 days straight. She hacked merchant networks, bribed information dealers, and followed money trails that led through a dozen shell companies. Finally, she found it. A refugee station on the edge of charted space, orbiting a dying star. The station was listed as abandoned in official records, but energy readings suggested hundreds of life forms. And financial records showed that the station's operation was funded by an anonymous account that matched the payment Hannah's father had given Kale 16 years ago. That's where he is, Jaiwan said with certainty. He's using your father's money to run a refuge for people nobody else wants. Hannah made her decision. She would go herself. Miho argued against it, but she overruled him. This is my investigation. My father's legacy. I need to see Kale with my own eyes. They planned carefully. Hannah would attend a diplomatic conference on a nearby system, then slip away with Miho and Jaiwan on a private shuttle. They would have 3 days before her absence was noticed. It had to be enough. The journey to the station took 2 days. As they approached, Hannah saw that the place was exactly as described, a patchwork of salvaged ships and habitat modules, held together with improvised connections and sheer determination. Hundreds of species lived here, refugees from wars and disasters, people who had nowhere else to go. They docked quietly and split up to search. Hannah wore a simple traveler's cloak, her distinctive blue skin hidden under makeup. She walked through corridors filled with the sounds of dozens of languages, past families living in converted cargo holds, past traders selling food from makeshift stalls. On the second day, Jaiwan found him. Training Yard, Section 7. You need to come now. Hannah's heart pounded as she made her way through the station. She turned a corner and saw an open space where children of various species practiced combat forms. And, there, demonstrating a defensive stance, was Kale. He was older. Gray touched his dark hair, and new scars marked his exposed arms. But, his movements were still fluid and precise, his voice still patient as he corrected a young Valerian girl's posture. Hannah's throat tightened. She had imagined this moment for months, but, now that it was here, she didn't know what to say. Then, Kale looked up, and their eyes met across the training yard. For a heartbeat, his carefully controlled expression cracked. Hannah saw shock, pain, and something that might have been joy flash across his face. Then, he went completely still, his features settling into a neutral mask that she didn't recognize. This was not the gentle guardian from her memories. This was someone who had learned to hide everything. He dismissed the children with a quiet word and walked toward her. Miho tensed beside Hannah, hand moving toward his weapon, but Hannah gestured for him to wait. Kale stopped 3 meters away. Princess Hannah, he said formally. You shouldn't be here. I came to find you, she replied, hating how her voice shook. I know what you are. I know what my father did. I know about the council. Something flickered in his eyes. Then, you know this is dangerous. For both of us. I don't care about danger. I need answers. Kale glanced around the busy yard, then gestured to a quieter corridor. They followed him to a small office filled with training equipment and medical supplies. Once inside, he sealed the door and, finally, let his guard drop slightly. How did you find me? He asked. You used my father's money to build this place, Hannah answered. That wasn't as anonymous as you thought. A small, sad smile crossed his face. I should have known. Your father taught you to be thorough. He sat heavily on a bench. What do you want from me, Hannah? The truth. Why did you leave? Why did my father pay you to disappear? Kale was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was tired. Because the council discovered I was human. They issued a kill order. Your father found out and realized that keeping me close made you a target. He gave me a choice, run and live, or stay and die along with you. What would you have chosen? Before Hannah could answer, alarms screamed through the station. Red lights flashed, and Kale was on his feet instantly, all fatigue gone. What is that? Miho demanded. Kale pulled up a security feed, and Hannah's blood froze. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace around the station. Sleek, dark vessels with Council military markings. They followed you, Kale said quietly. They know you're here, and they know I'm here. They've come to finish what they started. Hannah stared at the approaching fleet. She had led them right to Kale. She had endangered everyone on this station. And now the Council was done hiding their crimes. The battle was about to begin. The station shook as the first warning shot crossed its bow. Through the viewport, Hannah watched the Council fleet spread into attack formation. 6 heavy cruisers and, at least 20 smaller assault craft. Against a refugee station with no military defenses and no way to fight back. We need to evacuate, Miho said, already pulling up station schematics on his portable device. Get everyone to the escape pods. There aren't enough pods for everyone here, Kale replied calmly, his fingers flying over the security console. And those ships will shoot down anything that launches. This isn't a warning. It's an execution. Hannah felt sick. This is my fault. I led them here. No time for that now. Kale's voice was sharp, cutting through her spiral. Miho, get to the docking bay and prep every ship capable of flying. Jaiwan, I need you to lock down the station's communication array. If they're jamming us, I want them blind too. Hannah, come with me. The authority in his voice was absolute. Even Miho, who outranked everyone in the room, moved to obey. Kale grabbed a jacket and weapons belt from a locker, transforming from a patient teacher into something else entirely. A soldier. A warrior. The man from that corrupted video file. Hannah followed him into the corridor where chaos was spreading. Families were rushing toward shelters, station security was trying to organize a defense with inadequate weapons, and children were crying in confusion. Kale moved through it all with purpose, his presence somehow calming the panic. He led Hannah to the station's operations center, where a mixed group of security personnel were arguing about their options. When Kale entered, they all went quiet. How bad is it? Asked a woman with scaled skin and 3 arms. 6 cruisers, 20 assault craft, full weapons hot, Kale answered. They're not here to negotiate. We can't fight that, someone else said, voice breaking. We should surrender. Maybe they'll let the civilians go. They won't. Kale pulled up tactical displays. This is a Black Ops fleet. No identification codes, no communication attempts. They came to erase this station and everyone on it. The only question is whether we make them work for it. Hannah watched him work, dividing the station into defensive zones, assigning personnel, calculating firing angles. His mind was processing a dozen tactical variables simultaneously. This was not the gentle man who had sung her to sleep. This was someone who had fought in wars she couldn't imagine. You've done this before, she said quietly. Kale glanced at her. Humans have been surviving Council attacks for 2 centuries. You learn or you die. He turned back to the group. Listen carefully. The station's original structure was a military depot before it was abandoned. That means it has weapons, but they're old and offline. I need teams to reactivate the defensive grid. It won't stop them, but it'll slow them down. Slow them down for what? The scaled woman asked. We have no reinforcements coming. No, Kale agreed. But we have something better. We have time to tell the galaxy what's happening here. He looked at Jaiwan. Can you break their jamming? Jaiwan was already working. Give me 10 minutes. You have 5. After that, we start losing sections of the station. Kale began issuing rapid orders, sending teams to critical positions, organizing evacuation routes for the most vulnerable. Hannah had never seen anyone command with such efficiency. The first real attack came 4 minutes later. Assault craft launched torpedoes at the station's docking ports, trying to prevent escape. The explosions rocked the entire structure. Emergency bulkheads sealed, trapping some people in damaged sections. Kale didn't flinch, redirecting rescue teams and adjusting his defense plan. Defensive grid online, someone reported. Weapons charged to 40%. Fire at the closest assault craft, Kale ordered. Make them respect our range. Ancient weapon systems came alive, launching salvos that most Council ships could easily dodge. But, Kale had calculated the firing patterns perfectly. 2 assault craft took hits and retreated, buying precious seconds. Got it. Jaiwan shouted. Communications are open. Broadcasting on all frequencies. Kale nodded at Hannah. Tell them. Tell the galaxy what's happening. Hannah moved to the communication station, her hands shaking. She activated the broadcast, knowing that her next words would change everything. This is Princess Hannah of the Valerian Empire. I am on a civilian refugee station that is currently under attack by Council Black Operations Forces. They are here to silence me and murder everyone on this station because I discovered the truth about humanity. She took a breath and continued. 2 centuries ago, the Galactic Council lied about Earth's destruction. Humans survived, and the Council has spent 200 years hunting them because they feared human potential. My father was murdered for working with humans. Now they're trying to kill me for the same reason. I am transmitting all the evidence we've gathered. The Council's secret orders. The Terran contingency plan. Everything. Jaiwan's fingers flew as she uploaded terabytes of classified documents to every independent network in the galaxy. There was no taking it back now. The truth was spreading faster than any fleet could stop it. The Council ships intensified their attack. They knew they had minutes before the galaxy's attention turned to this remote corner of space. Torpedoes slammed into the station's outer hull. Sections began losing atmosphere. Kale directed the defense with ruthless precision, but they were losing ground. South Docking Bay is gone, Miho reported from his position. We've lost 12 ships. North Sector shields are failing, someone else called out. We can't hold that area. Kale studied the tactical display, his face grim. Evacuate North Sector. Seal it off and redirect power to the core. We're going to lose the outer ring. Hannah watched refugees streaming toward the station center, carrying children and the injured. How many would die because she had come here? How many families would be destroyed? As if reading her thoughts, Kale spoke quietly. This isn't your fault. They would have come eventually. The Council can't let places like this exist. We're proof that their control is a lie. Another explosion, closer this time. The operations center lights flickered. On the displays, Hannah saw a Council cruiser moving into position for a devastating strike at the station's core. One shot from that weapon would kill everyone still alive. They're preparing to fire main cannons, Miho said, his voice hollow. 5 minutes to impact. Kale stared at the screen, and Hannah saw something break in his expression. He had saved so many people over the years, built this refuge from nothing, given hope to the hopeless. And now it would all end because the Council feared what humans represented. I'm sorry, Hannah whispered. I'm so sorry. Kale turned to her, and, for a moment, his mask fell away completely. You were never just an assignment to me, he said. You were the child I chose to protect. When I left, it broke something in me that never healed. If this is how it ends, at least I got to see you one more time. At least I got to see the woman you became. Hannah felt tears on her cheeks. Kale, the tactical display suddenly, lit up with new contacts. Dozens of them, dropping out of hyperspace around the station. But, these weren't Council ships. They were older, mismatched vessels, converted freighters and colony transports and explorer ships. And they moved with coordinated precision, placing themselves between the station and the attacking fleet. "What is that?" Miho breathed. Kale stared at the screen, something like wonder crossing his face. "That's humanity." A transmission came through, audio only. The voice was female, speaking in English with an accent Hannah didn't recognize. "This is the Terran Free Fleet to Refugee Station. We received your broadcast. We're here to help. All human ships, engage defensive formation. Let's show the Council what happens when you corner Terrans." The Council fleet hesitated, clearly not expecting resistance. That moment of surprise was all the human ships needed. They weren't military vessels, but they moved like a pack, covering each other's weaknesses, using tactics that confused the Council's rigid formations. "They're outnumbered," the scaled woman said. "Those ships can't win." "They don't need to win," Kale replied, a small smile on his face. "They just need to make the Council retreat. And, trust me, humans are very good at making things too expensive for their enemies." The battle shifted. Human ships darted between Council cruisers, disrupting targeting systems, launching precisely timed attacks that forced the larger ships to break formation. It wasn't elegant, but it was effective. And, more importantly, it was being broadcast across the galaxy. The Council fleet commander must have realized they had lost the propaganda war. Destroying the station now would only prove Hannah's accusations. The ships began pulling back, firing a few last shots more for pride than strategy. "They're retreating," Miho reported, disbelief in his voice. "They're actually retreating." The operations center erupted in cheers, but Kale remained focused. "Get damage control teams to the worst areas. Start accounting for casualties. We're not safe yet." As the human fleet maintained their defensive position, another transmission came through. "Station, this is Captain Yuna of the Terran Free Fleet. We're sending over medical supplies and repair equipment. And we need to talk. About a lot of things." Kale looked at Hannah. The galaxy just changed. For the first time in 2 centuries, humans stopped hiding. There's no going back from this. Hannah nodded, exhaustion and relief warring inside her. They had survived. But the real battle was just beginning. The Council would never forgive this humiliation, and questions would demand answers about 2 centuries of lies. "What happens now?" she asked. Kale smiled, tired but genuine. "Now, humanity steps into the light. And you, Princess, just started a revolution." The medical bay was overwhelmed. Hannah moved through the chaos, helping where she could, carrying supplies, holding the hands of frightened children. Her royal training had never prepared her for this kind of work, but she refused to stand aside while others suffered because of her. Kale was everywhere, directing rescue operations, stabilizing damaged sections, coordinating with the human fleet. He moved with mechanical efficiency, but Hannah noticed how his hands shook slightly when he thought no one was watching. Even someone as experienced as him felt the weight of nearly losing everything. The final casualty count came 6 hours after the attack ended. 43 dead, over 100 injured. Entire sections of the station were uninhabitable. It could have been so much worse, but that knowledge didn't make the losses easier to bear. "You should rest," Miho told Hannah as dawn's cycle began. "You've been awake for 20 hours. So has everyone else," she replied, finishing bandaging a young refugee's arm. The child, a small creature with purple fur, looked up at her with wide eyes. "Are you really a princess?" the child asked. "Yes," Hannah answered softly. "Then, why are you here? Shouldn't you be somewhere safe?" Hannah thought about that question. A month ago, she would have been in the palace, surrounded by guards and advisors, insulated from the galaxy's harsh realities. "Sometimes being safe means standing with people who need help," she finally said. "Even when it's dangerous." The child seemed to accept that answer and scampered off to find their parent. Hannah watched them go, feeling something shift inside her. She had spent her whole life being protected. Maybe it was time to do the protecting. A message came through on her communicator. The human fleet wanted to meet. Captain Yuna requested her presence on the flagship, along with Kale. Miho insisted on coming too, his protective instincts on high alert. The human flagship was a converted colony ship called Persistence. As they docked, Hannah felt nervous in a way she hadn't during the battle. She was about to meet the people her father had trusted, the species the Council had tried to erase. Captain Yuna met them in a simple conference room. She was a woman in her 50s with weathered skin and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Two other humans stood with her, a younger man introduced as Teiho, the fleet's tactical coordinator, and an older woman named Suji who served as their diplomatic liaison. Princess Hannah, Yuna said, inclining her head respectfully. Thank you for exposing the truth. We've been waiting 2 centuries for this moment. I didn't do it for humanity, Hannah replied honestly. I did it because the Council murdered my father. We know, Suji said gently. Your father was a good man. He worked with us for 5 years, gathering evidence, building connections. We mourned his loss. That revelation struck Hannah hard. 5 years. Her father had been working with humans since before Kale left, and she had never known. How many secrets had he carried? How lonely must he have been? Kale spoke for the first time since they'd boarded. Why now? Why reveal yourselves now instead of staying hidden? Because the princess gave us leverage, Teiho explained, pulling up displays showing galactic news feeds. Her broadcast reached every major network before the Council could suppress it. The evidence she released is spreading faster than they can control. Public opinion is turning against them. The displays showed protests on Council worlds, demands for investigations, calls for reform. Member species were questioning whether their leaders had lied about other things. The careful order the Council maintained was cracking. But, there's more, Yuna continued. We're not the only humans out here. There are colonies, trading networks, entire communities that have survived in the shadows. When your broadcast went out, they all heard the call. Hundreds of human ships are converging on this position. We're done hiding. The Council won't accept that, Miho warned. They'll send a real military fleet next time. Let them try, Yuna said with a fierce smile. We've been preparing for this day. We know their tactics, their weaknesses, their supply lines. We've had 200 years to study them while they thought we were extinct. Suji touched Yuna's arm gently, a silent reminder. The captain took a breath and softened her tone. But, we're not looking for war. We want a seat at the table. Recognition as a sovereign people. The right to exist without fear. The Council will never agree to that willingly, Hannah said. No, Suji agreed. But, they might if enough member species pressure them. That's where you come in, Princess. You have influence. Your father's murder makes you sympathetic. Your evidence makes you credible. You could be the voice that forces the Council to negotiate. Hannah looked at Kale, who had been silent through most of the discussion. What do you think? Kale met her eyes. I think the galaxy is changing whether we want it to or not. The question is what kind of change it will be. Violent or peaceful? That depends on the choices people make now. Over the next 3 days, as the station underwent repairs and more human ships arrived, Hannah learned about humanity's hidden history. She spoke with traders who had lived their entire lives disguised as other species. She met engineers who had quietly improved technology on dozens of worlds without taking credit. She talked to teachers, doctors, artists, all living in the shadows while the galaxy thought them dead. What struck her most was their resilience. Humans had been hunted, isolated, and erased from history, yet they had not only survived but thrived. They had built communities based on mutual support rather than hierarchy. They helped other refugees because they knew what it meant to have nowhere to go. "Why do you do it?" she asked Kale one evening as they walked through the repaired sections of the station. "Why help all these people when you barely survived yourselves?" Kale was quiet for a moment. "It's in our nature, I think. Humans evolved as pack animals. We survived our world's dangers by working together, protecting the weak, refusing to abandon our own. That instinct doesn't go away just because the pack grows larger." He smiled slightly. "Besides, what else would we do? Bitterness and revenge don't build futures." News from the greater galaxy was chaotic. Several council members had resigned under pressure. Others were calling for Hannah's arrest, claiming she had fabricated evidence. The Valerian Empire was in turmoil, with nobles divided over whether to support their princess or distance themselves from her actions. Miho brought troubling intelligence. "There are council loyalists organizing in your empire. They're saying you've betrayed your people by siding with humans. Some are calling for your removal from succession." "Let them," Hannah said, surprising herself with her certainty. "I've seen what the council really is. If supporting the truth means losing my throne, then, I never deserved it." "Your father would be proud of you," Kale said quietly. That night, Hannah couldn't sleep. She found Kale in the station's observation deck, staring at the stars. He had been injured during the battle, taking damage to his side while protecting civilians. The wound was healing, but she could see pain in the way he moved. "Does it hurt?" she asked, sitting beside him. "I've had worse." He didn't look at her. "I should have realized they would track you. I should have prepared better defenses. You saved hundreds of lives. I nearly lost thousands, including you." His voice was raw. "When I saw those ships coming, all I could think was that I had failed again. Failed to keep you safe." "Kale." Hannah waited until he looked at her. "You didn't fail. You never failed. When you left, I was angry for years. I thought you had abandoned me. But, you were protecting me. You've been protecting people your whole life, haven't you?" He didn't answer, but his silence was confirmation enough. "You can stop now," she continued. "You don't have to carry this alone anymore. Humanity is stepping forward. Others can share the burden." "I don't know how to stop," he admitted. "This is all I've ever been." Hannah understood that feeling. She had been defined by her role as princess, by expectations and duties. But, maybe that was changing for both of them. "Then, learn with me. We'll figure out who we are beyond our obligations." Before Kale could respond, alarms sounded through the station. But, these weren't attack warnings. These were arrival alerts. Dozens of ships dropping out of hyperspace, but not military vessels. Jaiwan's voice came through the comm, "Princess, you need to see this." They rushed to the operations center where displays showed an impossible sight. Ships from every major species in the galaxy were arriving. Diplomatic vessels, civilian transports, even some military escorts. Not to attack, but to witness. "We're receiving hundreds of messages," Jaiwan reported, her voice awed. "Ambassadors requesting meetings. News organizations asking for interviews. Member species demanding the council address your evidence." Yuna appeared on screen from the persistence. "Princess, it's working. The galaxy is paying attention. They're asking questions the council can't ignore." Miho pulled up the latest intelligence reports. 3 more council members have resigned. 5 major species are threatening to leave the council unless there's a full investigation. "Princess, you've started something that can't be stopped." Hannah looked at the sea of ships on the displays, at the messages flooding in, at the momentum building. Her father had died trying to change the galaxy. She had continued his work out of grief and anger. But, somewhere along the way, it had become something larger than both of them. "Set up meetings with the ambassadors," she told Jaiwan. All of them. Tell them I'll answer any questions they have. And, the council? Miho asked. They've requested you return to face questioning. Tell them I'll return when they're ready to answer questions of their own. Kale stood beside her, and, for the first time since she'd found him, she saw pride in his eyes. Not the distant respect a guardian shows a charge, but the genuine pride of someone watching another person step into their power. What happens now? She asked, echoing her question from days before. Now, Kale answered, you change the galaxy. And, I'll be right beside you. The revolution was just beginning. 6 months later, Hannah stood before the reformed Galactic Assembly, facing representatives from 300 worlds. The old council chamber had been renovated, its symbols of hierarchy replaced with a circular arrangement where every species sat as equals. It was a small change, but symbolic of everything that had shifted. The investigation into the council's corruption had taken months and uncovered 2 centuries of suppression, assassination, and manipulation. 12 former council members were awaiting trial. Others had fled to unknown locations. The evidence Hannah and her father had gathered proved impossible to deny, and public pressure had forced complete transparency. But today was not about punishments. Today was about the future. The motion before us, the Assembly Speaker announced, is formal recognition of humanity as a sovereign galactic people with full rights and membership in this assembly. Princess Hannah of the Valerian Empire has the floor. Hannah stood, her ceremonial robes replaced with simple diplomatic attire. She had learned that true authority came not from crowns and titles, but from actions and character. Thank you. 6 months ago, I discovered that the guardian who protected me as a child was human. That revelation led me to uncover truths that shattered everything I believed about our galactic community. She gestured to where Kale sat among the human delegation. He wore formal clothes uncomfortably, looking like he would rather be anywhere else. But, he had agreed to be here, to stand as witness to this moment. I learned that the council lied to us all. They told us humanity was extinct while secretly hunting them across the galaxy. They did this because they feared human potential, feared change, feared losing control. But, in trying to suppress one species, they betrayed the values they claimed to uphold. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some species still resisted accepting humans, clinging to old fears and prejudices. But, many more had seen the evidence, had questioned why their leaders had lied for so long. My father gave his life trying to expose this truth, Hannah continued, her voice strengthening. He believed that a galaxy built on lies could never achieve real peace. He believed that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. He believed that humanity deserved a voice. She paused, looking around at the assembled representatives. I stand before you not just as a princess, but as someone who has seen what happens when we let fear guide our decisions. I've watched humans risk their lives to protect refugees. I've seen them share resources when they had little to spare. I've witnessed their courage, their compassion, and, yes, their stubbornness in refusing to be erased. That drew some chuckles from the assembly. Humanity's reputation for persistence had become legendary in recent months. The question before us is simple, Hannah concluded. Will we build a galaxy based on truth and inclusion, or will we continue the mistakes of the past? I vote for recognition. I vote for humanity's place among us. And, I ask you all to do the same. She sat down. Miho, now promoted to ambassador of Valerian security, squeezed her shoulder supportively. Jaiwan, serving as her chief advisor, smiled encouragement. The debate lasted hours. Some species argued that humanity was too unpredictable, too different. Others countered with stories of humans who had helped their worlds without seeking recognition. The human delegation, led by Captain Yuna and Suji, answered questions with patience and honesty. Finally, the vote was called. The results displayed on the chamber's main screen. 300 worlds. 247 voted for recognition. 38 against. 15 abstained. The chamber erupted in applause. It wasn't unanimous, but it was overwhelming. Humanity was officially recognized as a galactic species with full rights and protections. Hannah found Kale after the session ended. He stood on a balcony overlooking the assembly complex, watching ships arrive and depart. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Strange," he admitted. "For 2 centuries, my people lived in shadows. Now we're here, recognized, protected by the same organization that tried to erase us. It's hard to process." "Does it bother you? Working with them? Working with their successors, you mean?" Kale turned to face her. "The people who committed those crimes are gone or facing justice. The assembly now is different. Not perfect, but trying to be better. That's all anyone can do." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Their relationship had evolved over the past months. No longer guardian and charge, not quite equals in authority, but something deeper. Family, in the way humans defined it. Chosen bonds that transcended blood and duty. "I'm returning to the station next week," Kale said. "There's still work to do there. Children to teach, people to help." "I know." Hannah had expected this. Kale was not made for politics and ceremony. His purpose lay in the quiet work of protection and education. "But, you'll come back sometimes? For visits?" "I will." He smiled, genuine warmth in his expression. "You're stuck with me now. I've spent 16 years watching you from afar. I'm not disappearing again." "Good. Because I'm going to need advice. Running an empire while serving on the assembly is complicated. You'll manage. You're your father's daughter." Kale paused. "He would be proud of you, Hannah. Not just for exposing the truth, but for what you've built from it. You didn't let anger and grief consume you. You channeled them into something better." The praise meant more than any honors the assembly could bestow. Hannah had accomplished what her father started, but she had done it her own way, with her own choices. Over the following weeks, the galaxy continued its transformation. Human colonies that had hidden for generations came forward. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchanges began. It wasn't smooth or easy, but it was progress. The investigation into her father's assassination concluded with the arrest of 3 former council security officers. They had killed him on orders from council members who feared his investigation into the Terran contingency plan. The trial was public, the evidence damning. Justice, delayed for months, finally arrived. Hannah attended the sentencing but found no satisfaction in it. Her father was still gone. Punishment couldn't bring him back. But perhaps his death had not been meaningless. Perhaps the galaxy he dreamed of was finally becoming real. 3 months after the assembly vote, Hannah visited Kale at the refugee station. It had been rebuilt and expanded, now housing over 2,000 people from dozens of species. Human volunteers worked alongside aliens, teaching trades, providing medical care, offering hope to those who had none. She found Kale in the training yard, teaching a mixed group of children defensive techniques. He had them practicing in pairs, correcting their forms, praising their efforts. This was where he belonged, making small differences that accumulated into changed lives. When the session ended, they walked through the station's new garden section. Plants from hundreds of worlds grew together in carefully maintained environmental zones. It was a living metaphor for what the station represented, diversity flourishing through cooperation. "I've been thinking about what comes next," Hannah said. "For me, I mean. I have responsibilities to my empire and the assembly, but I want to do more. Something meaningful like this." "What did you have in mind?" "A foundation. Something that supports places like this station. That helps refugees, promotes cultural understanding, sponsors education programs. She looked at him. I want to use my resources for what my father believed in. What you've been doing all along. Kale considered this. That would help many people. But, it's a long-term commitment. Are you prepared for that? I am. Because I finally understand what you and my father knew. Real change doesn't come from dramatic gestures. It comes from consistent effort, from showing up day after day, from refusing to accept that things can't be better. You've learned well. They reached an observation window that looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there were human worlds coming into the light, species learning to trust each other, refugees finding new homes. The galaxy was not perfect. It never would be. But, it was trying, and that was enough. Thank you, Hannah said quietly. For everything. For protecting me when I was a child. For teaching me what really matters. For staying in my life even when it was dangerous. Kale put a hand on her shoulder, a gesture of affection and respect. You don't need to thank me. Watching you grow into who you are has been the greatest privilege of my life. Your father asked me to keep you safe. I think I did better than that. I got to see you become someone who makes the galaxy safer for everyone. 2 weeks later, Hannah addressed the Valerian Empire from her father's old office. She had considered moving to a new location, but decided to honor his memory by continuing his work from where he had started it. My father once told me that a leader's true measure is not in the power they hold, but in the futures they enable, she began, speaking to her people and, through broadcast, to the wider galaxy. He believed that we are strongest when we stand together, when we protect the vulnerable, when we refuse to let fear dictate our choices. She had announced her foundation earlier that day. Already, donations were pouring in from unexpected sources. Species that had once feared humans now supported programs to help them integrate into galactic society. It wasn't universal support, but it was significant. I know many of you are uncertain about the changes our galaxy faces, Hannah continued. Change is frightening. The familiar is comfortable, even when it's wrong. But, I've learned something important over these past months. Real strength isn't refusing to change. It's having the courage to grow, to admit mistakes, to build something better. She thought of Kale, teaching children on a distant station. Of her father, who had died believing truth mattered more than power. Of Yuna and Suji and all the humans who had survived against impossible odds. Of Miho and Jaiwan, who had stood by her through everything. We have a choice, she concluded. We can cling to old fears and old lies. Or we can build a future where every species has a voice, where truth matters more than comfort, where we measure ourselves by how we treat the powerless, not just the powerful. I know which future I choose. I hope you'll choose it with me. The response was mixed, as she expected. Some praised her vision. Others criticized her naivety. But, across the galaxy, young people especially heard her message. A new generation that had grown up with the lies was ready to build something different. Months became years. The Assembly created new policies protecting refugees and preventing the kind of suppression humanity had endured. Human culture began influencing the galaxy in unexpected ways, their music and art and stories finding audiences. Not everyone accepted them, but acceptance was growing. Kale continued his work at the station, which became a model for similar facilities across the galaxy. He trained a new generation of teachers and guardians, passing on the skills and values that had sustained humanity through its darkest times. Hannah built her foundation into a force for change, funding education, supporting refugees, promoting understanding between species. She remained active in the Assembly, pushing for reforms, holding leaders accountable, refusing to let the lessons of the past be forgotten. They stayed in touch, visiting when they could, maintaining the bond that had started in her childhood and evolved into something deeper. Not guardian and charge. Not princess and subject. But family, in the truest sense of the word. One evening, 5 years after the assembly vote, Hannah received a message from Cale. He had attached a video of the station's newest arrivals, 30 human children who had been living in hiding on a remote world, orphaned by a mining accident. They were scared and traumatized, but already the station's community was rallying to help them heal. "Thought you'd want to see this," Cale's message read. "These kids will grow up in a galaxy where they don't have to hide. Where they can be themselves without fear. That's because of what you started. Thank you for giving humanity a chance." Hannah watched the video again, seeing the children's faces light up as they explored their new home. This was what her father had fought for. What she had risked everything to achieve. Not grand political victories, but simple moments where people could live without fear. She began her response, "Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like. For teaching me that the greatest power is using what you have to help others. For being the family I chose, and who chose me. The galaxy is better because you're in it." She hit send and looked out her office window at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity was building new futures. Species were learning to trust each other. Children were growing up in a better galaxy than the one she had inherited. It wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was better. And, every day, people like Cale made it a little better still. That was enough. That was everything. The moment an alien princess had uncovered her childhood guardian was human had changed the galaxy. But, it was what came after that moment, the daily choice to build something better, that truly mattered. And, that work would never end. It would continue through them, through the children they taught, through every person who chose truth over comfort and compassion over fear. The galaxy was vast and complex and often cruel. But it was also full of people trying to make it better. And that, Hannah had learned, was the most human thing of all.